Is the bucket strategy a cheap gimmick? Answer, no, it's not a cheap gimmick. So we're done here. I'm just being silly. All right, so my man Fritz over at Fritz Gilbert right here over at the Retirement Manifesto, and you know I call Fritz a friend of mine as in his better half, old Jackie. And the reason I call him a friend of mine is because this puppy right here we got from going to visit with Fritz up in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Go up to see Fritz, come back with a dog. That's why I'm not going back, Fritz. Just joking. I got to get back up there. Fritz kicks ass. I love Fritz. Fritz and Jackie just crush. Fritz has got this book. I'll share it with you, which you should get because you don't want to be... Let me find it real quick. Where the hell is that book? I'll share it with you. I'll put a link in the show notes. That way, if you do get it, I get paid that big 2% commission on... I think it's right. Let me find this book 1 second. Keys to a successful retirement. Stay happy, active, and productive in your retired years. Now, I have some highlights in here. A couple of things in here that just, right there. I've been a while since I even opened this. So I have a star that says, Retirement Tip 13, focus on developing retirement relationships, ideally while you're still working. Okay. I'm not sure why I highlighted that. I'm not going to read the chapter around that. Don't retire until you have bucket one fully funded and have enough cash on hand to avoid selling stocks in a bear market. That's what I highlighted there. Can completely agree. Let's see. Retirement tip 8. Plan to do any major spending required to create your ideal retirement while you're still working. 100%, dude. 100%. We became 100% debt-free and even have some excess home equity funds that we've applied to our bucket one cash reserves. As we spend down bucket one, we periodically refill it by selling stocks and bonds from buckets 2 and 3. And depending on how the markets are doing and how much Finney over there growls, we will refill. Oh boy, there's no Finn. We will refill bucket one at least twice a year, maintaining as close to a 3-year full level as possible. When the bear attacks, we'll pull several years from bucket one without refilling if necessary. Yeah, that's 100% right. All right, so anyway, on his blog, it is a friendly debate with he called it cheap gimmick, so I challenged him to a duel. Strap in, folks, we got dudes today. And so he called it cheap gimmick. Fritz is just a good writer. By Karsten Jeske. I don't know who Karsten Jeske is. He's a PhD in CFA, so obviously we got to slow it down for him. We got to slow. It's like kind of like talking like when you're in the Army, you talk to Marines. You tell them, look, watch this on half speed so you can capture all the information I share because you're Marines, right? Same thing with PhD CFAs. You got to say, watch this on half stream so it can sink in because I know you're not quite the same level of IQ as we are. I'm joking. Anyway, this guy seems, I don't know who he is, but I think it goes by Big Erm. But thanks, still leaning towards a cheap gimmick. And I thought this was funny right here because I would post it because I was like, hey, we'll go into it. I chuckled because he's a good guy. I can tell a mile away. So let me see if I can't find my right here. I said, to be honest, it was a cheap gimmick in the title that made me click on the article. I'm a huge fan of Fritz, just don't find much value in debates on investing strategy. But my man says, who was that guy? Yep, totally clickbait. Blogging 101%. 80% of your traffic comes from the title. Right, 100%, man. That's good stuff. That's good. I got no qualm with that. So you got to get people to read it. We know that. And if you don't have a good title, they're not going to read it. You can call it clickbait all you want. I don't care. I'm going to use the same damn title on this video, and more people click on it. It's just that simple. All right, so public debate on the merits of the bucket strategy. It all started a few weeks ago when I published the bucket strategy in a bear market. Not only did the article generate good discussion with 77 comments, but also led to a flurry of activity on Twitter. This is Fritz now. Ultimately, is this tweet chain with Big Earn. I don't know what. I guess that's that guy, Karsten Jeske, that led to derive from this. Never want to back. Tactical timing of stocks versus cash is hit or miss, and I can't add alpha in small percentage and So basically, he's still leaning towards a cheap gimmick because diversified portfolio rebalancing does the same. Withdraw from positions that fell less. I'm going to share with you a thing on that, actually, on rebalancing. It's actually interesting, by the way. Never want to back down from a good debate. I sent Carson a private IM, know what that is, and proposed we debate the topic. Fortunately agreed. So let's see. I want to point out something right here. So here, Fritz goes into his bucket strategy, which, you know, Fritz was in the military. He'd obviously be a Navy guy because this is way too complex. We can't figure this out in the Army. Come on, Fritz. He gets it. He likes this stuff. I don't. I'm like, ugh. All right, but let's see. Karsten says he likes to distinguish between three different flavors that we can consider bucket strategy: strategic asset allocation, stocks versus bonds versus cash; glide path, changing asset weights as you get older, target fund; tactical asset allocation would involve intentional deviations from the strategic. All right, so he's definitely a portfolio manager because only portfolio managers talk like this. And I'm not bashing this guy, not in the least. I find him, I enjoyed very much reading this article, and I like the fact he was ready to admit that the title was clickbait. That's freaking awesome. Anyway, so we're kind of coming at it from a little bit different perspective, but strategic asset allocation, glide path. This right here, 60-40, every year you rebalance. Glide path, as you get older, you go from 60-40 to 55-45. Oh, it just makes my head hurt just thinking about this. And then tactical allocation. I think international stocks are undervalued. Don't do that. So why doesn't he like that? Because he says he's not able to. Tactical timing of stocks versus cash is hit or miss, which I agree. Tactical timing. On December 24th, I'll do it, but not on December 26th. Come on. Or tactical timing, I'll do it on December 24th because the markets are down below the 200-day moving average. And I'm not saying that's how Fritz does it. Diversified portfolio rebalancing does the same as a bucket strategy. I take issue with that. Let's see here. So let's see. In my mind, the critical element is having a plan to ensure you're being intentional to make a jet. Okay. So here's Fritz: 3 years cash, 6 years of bonds, 70% stocks. That's fine. So that's his bucket. And what the other guy would say, well, you just do this in a diversified portfolio and rebalance once a year. It's the same thing. And you just pull money from it. It's going to literally be the same thing. So he's making the argument in favor of the bucket strategy, this Carson guy. My safe withdrawal research, this is from him. My safe withdrawal research shows that most retirees should limit their equities to between 60 and 80% and keep the remaining percentage in lower risk assets like fixed income. 100%, man. And he said, I know bonds didn't do well in 2022, but some of the market disasters, they provide extraordinary diversification. I completely agree. But I don't get the argument. So you got 60, 80% stocks and the rest in, say, fixed income stuff. Or cash, I don't care what it is, Ginnie Mae. And then, I mean, so this, I don't get it. I'm not sure what the debate would be, actually. It's like, so, okay, so instead of saying, I'm just going to pull specifically from that 25% in bonds, he's saying you're just going to pull it from the same bucket and then you're going to rebalance accordingly. I just find that an argument that's not, I don't know, okay. We're arguing the same thing, is that when the market decline hits, you're going to have to pull the cash from someplace. I mean, that's all there is to it. So you're going to pull it from your stocks, your bonds, your cash, or you're going to put them in one big bucket, Fidelity Balanced Fund, Wellington, and pull it from that. Okay, it's all the same thing. It's all going to rebalance accordingly. But I want to share with you something here. Let's keep going. I just think this is an argument we're not really making an argument against each other, Fritz or this guy or me. We're just saying, it's just a matter of preference of where to put the money. What's the guy, Bob Burger? He must be on a low carb diet because his head seems like it's getting bigger relative to his body. And that's like Al Sharpton and Clinton. Whenever you go on these massive low carb diets, your head gets bigger relative to your body. That's what happened to me when I lost 25 pounds in 2013, something like that. 14, my head got freaking way big. It didn't look good. So I received a number of emails from you him talking about the bucket strategy, how he didn't like it. And the reason he didn't like it, he was saying for efficiency, we just want, in terms of efficiency, getting the biggest bang for our buck in terms of upside growth. Just putting a diversified portfolio and rebalancing is the best way you can do that. but that's we're not accumulation phase anymore. That's my whole issue is we're at decumulation phase. So at decumulation phase, we're not trying to maximize efficiency on the upside. We're just not. Let's see if there's anything else we can argue about here. There's still a lot of confusion about how long stock market downturns have lasted historically. Some folks declare very confidently but incorrectly that you need only a few years worth of safe assets because that's the length of historical bear markets. Nothing could be further from the truth. What? Okay. At the end of the bear market, equities are severely underwater. If we define the length of the market downturns at the time in terms the portfolio reaches the initial level again, net of CPI. Why would we do it net of CPI? That just doesn't make any sense to me at all. If we understood what CPI was, we'd realize using CPI as your inflation parameter in retirement doesn't make any sense at all. But we'll go with it. I don't get it. Nothing can be further from the truth. As I point out in my 2019 post, it can take 20 years to recover from an equity market downturn if we account for inflation and withdrawals. Being inflation, CPI is inflation. Don't do that. No cash bucket will last that long, so the bucket strategy is only incomplete hedge against the sequence risk. You can't. If you're going to be in equities, you're not going to hedge against the sequence risk no matter what. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I've done this myself. It's okay if you had 60-40 portfolio versus whatever, the bucket, your 60-40 portfolio is still doomed. Might be doomed 6 months later, but still doomed. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I want to share with you something here. From an article in Advisor Perspectives by my man Wade and Massimo. Massimo, I don't know who Massimo is. Looks like a good-looking young chap. Wade, The Dangers of Monte Carlo Simulations. And this was pretty interesting right here. E.F. Moody, another PhD, so we got to slow it down. He's got all these letters after his name. That's how they learn the alphabet, by putting all these letters after their name. Look, I'm goofing on these guys. Don't get a freaking stick up your butt, people. I'm not making fun of them. One thing that kind of cracked me up was right here. It's intends to look at the fiduciary failure of the industry to the middle and lower income investors regarding exposure risk loss. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, right here. Research has entailed comments by some of the leading art authorities in mathematics. This is what I'm talking about. This math is the physics envy, and physics have math envy. It's so embarrassing, man. I can't stand it. Just because you're good at math doesn't mean you're a genius. It doesn't. Your math cannot prove dark matter. Your math cannot prove gravity. Your math can't prove anything. Your math cannot prove that I have a freaking thing in my hand. This is not gravity. That's a freaking, your math doesn't prove this. Your math doesn't prove this. This is a pen falling to the ground. Electrostatics, density, we can argue all day long. Your math doesn't prove gravity. Your math doesn't prove dark matter. Your math doesn't prove Einstein. It's like we have this, they're mathematics. They prove everything. Don't even get me starting on physicists because they acknowledge it readily. All right, so let's see here. Leading authorities in math and statistical reality versus what is antiquated and irresponsible. Imperfect correlations, definition of diversification, rebalance, economics, inverted yield. Oh, gosh. Anyway, but I like what he says here, because he's basically saying the measure of volatility standard deviation is nice. If mathematical and wrong, volatility is not risk. Or it's mathematically wrong. Volatility is not risk. I can agree more, because volatility is both sides of the equation, going up and down. However, most people look at a market decline on the downside. What is it called? Variable at risk, VAR is what it's called. What's my downside risk? That's what most people look at it. They say, okay, that's volatility on the down. We can say volatility in of itself is not a measure of risk, but it is a measure of risk for most people. Come on, everyone knows this, but I agree. Past volatility does not measure risk. Yeah, it kind of does. It says we had 2007, October to March 2009 was the worst year we've ever freaking had. No, it's not. 1930 was worse. Not when you factor in inflation. If we're going to use the CPI, then we look at 2008 worse than 1931. If you don't want to look at CPI and assume that the cost of goods did not go down in 1931, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Either way, CPI, net or not, if we're going to use it or not, the 2008 was the second worst, and if you factor in CPI, then 2008 was the worst. That's not debatable. Not debatable. So that's a pretty good downside measure of risk, 2008. Past volatility. Was that not volatility? Sure it was. It's absolutely volatility. Now, since 2009, March 9th, 2009, we've had massive volatility to the upside. Yes, we don't look at that risk, but we're talking reality here, man. Warren Buffett, just go fund Planned Parenthood some more so you depopulate the world. I get what you're up to. Look, Dan and Amos Tversky. For some reason, Tversky didn't get the Nobel. Economan did, but people mainly think in terms of downside risk. They're concerned about the maximum they can lose. Exactly. But again, saying beta does not do it for most people who are more concerned with the possibility of loss. But it's like we're talking the same thing. Just some people got to try to act like, all right. So, but I want to go right here. Where's Talib? Right here. The direction of the contagion often is unexpected because the link from one market to the next doesn't depend on the usual relationships. It isn't governed by typical correlations. Co-association between securities is not measurable using correlation. Look, this is where we're correlating risks. I got to correlate to the S&P. I don't use any of that. I could care less. But I do use 2008 as the prime model. All right. Never think that lack of variability is stability. I agree with that. Don't confuse lack of volatility with stability ever. All right, so here's my man, Michael Edison. Well, we know Michael. We've interviewed him once or twice on this channel. Financial advisors the fallacy of rebalancing. Financial advisors routinely adhere to the discipline of rebalancing portfolios so much that they invest tens of thousands of dollars of software to do it for them. That adherence has been regularly reinforced by financial writers. I show why this conventional wisdom is wrong and rebalancing may be as unwise as an investment as the software used to do it. 1 second. Many people believe... 1 second. They get ants in their pants. So what happens when you have 4 kids, man? People bounce around everywhere all the time. Many people believe rebalancing pays off because they confuse the past with the future. They think that because a security or asset had a higher price recently than it has now, it will return to that higher price in the near future. But careful investigation of price patterns reveal that this is not true. The likelihoods of the direction of the next price move will take up or down in its magnitude are independent of the direction and magnitude of the last price move. This mistaken intuition is not a valid justification for rebalancing. Look at this. Rebalancing should be dismissed as nothing more but the poorly examined conventional wisdom that it is. The plethora of articles in financial journals filled with largely irrelevant mathematics notwithstanding. Michael Edison kicks out. And he's a mathematic genius too, by the way. The greatest damage done by this myth is that it helps to surround providers of financial advice with the aura of knowing something that they don't know at all. Michael Edison's crushes, a big fan, and he's a mathematic genius. Anyway, so I did a thing on here where I said, I was with you until this. None of the comments identified the inverted yield curve. This is a breach of fiduciary duty since it's been shown to be 100% in stating recession is forthcoming. It's not guaranteed, but it's a darn sight better than playing with correlations or 3 to 4 or 5 sigmas of standard deviations. I don't, that's silly to say. You were saying, that's, again, if you eat carrots, you will die. Just because there's an inverted yield curve in of itself doesn't mean a recession is coming. Recessions come all the time. Inverted yield curve may or may not lead to a recession, but again, if I eat carrots, I will die. There's a correlation without a causation. Is there more of a causation with an inverted yield curve and me eating carrots? Of course. But when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? When's the recession going to come? We're already in it. It's already here. Yeah. Anyway, so the point being is, rebalancing. In fact, I want to share something else. This is what we've all been taught in financial literature. Rebalancing an investment portfolio increases long-term returns while reducing risk. You hear what they said? Increases. You can't say that. You can't say doing this increases. You don't know. You cannot say that crap. It's sometimes called investing's free lunch. You get something positive return for doing almost nothing. It drives me up the wall. We're going to back test and say, if we rebalance, we have an investing free lunch. You can't extrapolate that to the future. You can't, which is why I love the bucket strategy. Because the bucket strategy is my stocks and my cash. Stocks over here, my cash. I've been in this business for a long damn time. I'm telling you right now, when you show people their portfolios and they say, oh man, the market's getting killed. Oh, I got to do something. You're like, well, let's take a look. Oh, you're only down half what the markets are. Really? Yeah. Because your stocks are down, your bonds are not. And as such, you're not down nearly, and they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know about that. I was thinking I had to do something because you have them commingled. If so, what happens is you go on your portfolio, you say, here's my stock portfolio, here's my bond portfolio, just for simplicity, my cash. Stocks are getting crushed, bonds are doing okay. No, that feels pretty good. That feels pretty good. It does feel pretty good where people don't make a mistake and say, I gotta do something. Markets are down. I cannot tell you how many times I've had this discussion. I'm getting killed. Really? Let's take a look. Oh, you're not really getting killed nearly the extent you thought. Why? Because the bonds typically, unlike last year, I think there's one other year too. I want to say 67 or something like that. I can't remember. Actually, let's take a look. We're just gonna look at let's look at 10-year actually. 10-year treasuries. I don't think that's gonna be the rates. Yeah, that's not gonna do it. I'm looking at Daniel Colbert's 55e.co. And let's just use the 1 year. Oops, 1 second. Let's do 1 year. One month treasury bills. Yeah, that should not. I don't think that's. I'm talking to myself. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me go into. I think for some reason I got 67 on my head. That's the year that we had both stocks and bonds go down, and it's not going to the treasury rates, of course. Let's look at a bond fund we got here. We're just going to use a was it Putnam? Look at Putnam fund. Hey, what happened to Putnam? Did I miss it? Pause. Putnam income fund class A is the longest fund that I can find data on. I think it goes back to 1955 or something like that. Let's see here. Putnam goes back to right there. Let's make this a little bit smaller. No growling, McGee. Putnam goes back to right there. Oh boy. Yeah, 55. All right, so here we got Putnam right there. 69. Oh, look, 66 and 69. Putnam income fund and the S&P 500 were down at the same time. And again, it's 73, 74. No, it's a lot more than I would have thought, actually. And this, look at that. That's, I guess that's pretty much it. 2008, I don't think it was. Yeah, see, Putnam fund. No, yeah, it's not going to be a good example because if you're looking at government bond funds, you have to look like the Ginnie Mae, and that's only been around since 1980. So, yeah. Anyway, the Ginnie Mae is only. The idea, though, the stocks and bonds are typically, I hate to say not correlated, but generally speaking, when stocks go down, the bonds have not. Now, on a couple occasions, that's not true, but generally speaking. Anyway, point being is going back to this free lunch, where was that? Right here. There's no such thing as an investing free lunch because you can't say this happened, thus it will happen. And increases is not increased in the plural, I mean the past sense, it's increases in the future sense. You cannot flip and say that. Ooh, interesting. See, they have some good calculators on this blog. I haven't looked at this blog for a long time. The academic, this is by, who wrote this? Ooh, my man Edison. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, these guys got great calculators. All right, so we just talked about that. I'll do another thing on that as well. But anyway, the point being is I get it. The guys, I'm not bashing these guys. There's no cheap gimmick to this, though. The idea that the cheap gimmick would be a rebalancing is going to increase your returns. You simply can't state that. You can't. And if we're Bob Burger saying, well, rebalancing without doing the bucket will give us more returns because historically it did, that's A, silly in one phase, because I just said you can't say it in the future, but B, is silly in the second phase, which is we're not in the accumulation stage anymore. All right, you're just not. I'm just telling you, man, you got a bucket strategy, cash, stocks, that's it. Or, Wellington cash. Why mess with success, dude? The academics, look, again, they're not that great. They're not that smart. I get you. That's why they're an academic, because they're not that bright. Goofing. Anyone, again, stick out of your butt. But at the end of the day, just because they're academics, they'll have all the math to prove it. Prove dark matter. Can't. But your mathematics has to, or else Einstein doesn't work. Prove the Lorentz contraction. Prove it. Can't. But your mathematics has to prove it, or else freaking relativity doesn't work. We know this. Just because your math can prove it doesn't mean crap. And if you're not familiar with the Lorentz contraction, I would encourage you to do before you sit there and say, you don't know anything, Einstein. I would highly encourage you to look up the Fitzgerald-Lorentz contractions. What do they call it? They call it the abstractions, I think, but the contractions. And you say, yeah, it doesn't really make sense, but our math. Right. Love your thoughts. We'll see you.